What's good, people? Agent Juice reporting for duty. Today's Speedpaint and video is about another Ed, Eddy fan comic that was made way back when. This particular one is called Bring Me to Ed, created by the DeviantArt user DARKENEDSPARROW. Really quickly before going into it, I do want to shout out Wobble for bringing this particular lovely little gem to my attention so I could take a look at it, because I have a weak spot for Ed, Eddy weird alternative fanfiction. You all remember back in Halloween when I covered Night of the Were-Ed, made by Nintendo Nut One? Well, this is kind of the same thing. Way back in 2010 or 2012, so quite a bit ago, not quite in the 2000s, but the early 2010s, a young artist decided to make a fun, teen, angsty little fan comic of Ed, Eddy called Bring Me to Ed. And so I decided to honor that particular story and dive into it because, as you know, by watching Night of the Were-Ed, I have a special place in my heart for those bizarre, teen, angsty fan works that show a very vulnerable and sincere part of a person's psyche. And so I am not here to mock this work, as I was not there to mock Night of the Were-Ed. No, I am here to enjoy it for all of its teen angst and reminisce about the days gone past. So without further ado, let's go ahead and buckle into our favorite cul-de-sac. Let us fall in love with a chicken. That's literally what happens. And then the chicken is murdered, and it turns out the ghost of the chicken is a beautiful OC girl. Let us lovingly embrace the OC girl, as we would lovingly embrace the sacred buttons. And let's go ahead and talk about Bring Me to Ed. So this particular speed paint that you're seeing right now is, of course, Ed and the chicken in question. The story goes that Rolf has a chicken named Spell, who's a very special chicken, and Ed really likes chickens, so he really likes Spell, but then Spell is killed by a mysterious entity, and, you know, Ed is really heartbroken and sad about it, but then this mysterious, the Spell ends up rising as a ghost, but not as a ghost of a chicken, but as a beautiful OC girl, and of course, Ed falls in love with the beautiful OC girl, but we have to learn about the mysterious entity who killed Spell, who's actually this evil guy. And the point is, like, you're probably wondering, why does Ed have luscious long locks and wearing an edgy trench coat and everything? Well, because at some point, Spell merges with Ed and gives him edgy superpowers. So it's kind of like The Crow, right, with Brandon Lee, or I guess in this case it would be the chicken. And of course the beautiful girl who's lovingly, you know, like dramatically fainting in Ed's arms is Spell's ghost, because the real Spell is a chicken, but Spell's ghost is human. The comic itself is rather long saga. It is over 100 pages, like 107 or 108 pages long. I will actually link DARKENEDSPARROW'S DeviantArt account so you can read the whole thing yourself. It's a delicious little read. I must say, first and foremost, again, because I'm not here to mock this particular work, the thing I really love about Bring Me to Ed, in comparison to Night of the Were-Ed, Night of the Were-Ed was done in the artist's style. Like, you could tell that Nintendo Nut One drew it in a very, like, original anime-esque style, whereas DARKENEDSPARROW draws Bring Me to Ed on model, which I think is hilarious. So all of this teen angst stuff, which you would probably expect more with, like, anime style, is instead done in Ed, Eddy style. So the fact that she can actually mimic the Ed, Eddy style just cracks me up, and it's great. So seeing all this stuff with on-model Ed, Eddy is hilarious. The second thing that really blew me away with this work is that the characters act like themselves. Okay, again, Night of the Were-Ed, the characters are kind of somewhat out of character, so they can be more, you know, teen angsty. But in Bring Me to Ed, they all behave like Ed, Eddy characters. There's a scene where Ed first meets Spell's ghost for the first time, and they're talking lovingly about everything, and Ed says something like, "I feel all warm and fuzzy when you speak to my udder, Spell." Now, in the actual comic, udder is spelled U-T-T-E-R, as in, like, you know, utter dread or something like that, where I think what was meant to be said was udder, as in, like, you know, the udder of a cow, which is a breast, which is, like, similar to the heart. So it's basically Ed saying, "I feel warm and fuzzy when you speak directly to my heart, Spell." At least that's how I'm interpreting it, because I think that's hilarious, because that is totally something Ed would say. "I feel it in my udder, Eddie." I think that's hilarious that she managed to get, so you have this angsty, like lovey-dovey scene going on, and Ed still speaks like Ed. Bring Me to Ed is really good at staying on model and staying in character, but there is one thing that Bring Me to Ed did that Night of the Were-Ed did not, which is the greatest angsty teen move you can pull in a fan fiction, OCs. Yes, this particular comic has 3 OCs, not 1, not 2, but 3. So the first OC is quite obvious. It's Spell, right? The main love interest of Bring Me to Ed is the ghost of Spell. She seems like a very pure spirit, which is kind of exactly what you would expect for a character who's meant to fit this specific bill in this specific story. Now, there are 2 other OCs. Oh, I'm sorry, there's 4 OCs. Oh, never mind. Sorry, there's 4 OCs, okay? Because you have Spell. And then you have this scene where Spell the chicken first gets killed by the mysterious entity. The mysterious entity is going to be the 4th OC, by the way. Okay, so Spell the chicken is killed, and there's a funeral. And you see all the cul-de-sac kids, you know, crying as they mourn the death of the chicken. And then there's these 2 characters, these 2 chicks in the background. And I'm just like, huh, who these chicks, I wonder? So the first other OC is Alexandra, who is Double D's love interest. She just kind of appears. Darkened Sparrow has made other fan comics that kind of expand on the lore, if you will, of this. So I'm sure Alexandra was introduced somewhere else. But the point is, she's Double D's kind of like tough girl, doesn't take no nonsense from no one, girlfriend of Double D. And then you have Ezeke, or Ezeke, or E-Z-E-K-E, who isn't a chick, but is a dude. He's a girly man. He's, what do the kids call him these days? The femboy, right? The Astolfo, and back in my day, it was Bridget. But the point is, yeah, you have him. He's Kevin's cousin. And of course, his whole thing is that he's very effeminate and shy. And there's even an entirely separate comic where of all people, Rolf falls for Zeke, which I thought was hilarious because, you know, you get that whole thing where like Rolf realizes that Zeke is actually male, and it's that whole thing of like, you know, oh, discovering sexuality, yada yada. But it's like she even put in the line where Rolf says like, Rolf's eyes fool the brain of Rolf. I love how well she's Darkened Sparrow is able to stick with the actual characters and how they would act. It's beautiful. So those 2 characters are kind of there. They don't really have super important roles, except where Alexandra gets kidnapped by Edgy Ed in order to be the vessel to resurrect Spell or something. But anyway, we got to get to the 4th. We got to get to the 4th OC. Okay, the fourth OC is the funniest one. So at the beginning of the story, when Spell is murdered, it's this mysterious shady entity. Now, when I first saw the mysterious shady entity, because there's a scene where he's like peeking through the bushes and you see his face, my first thought was like, whoa, is that Johnny? Because Darkened Sparrow specifically said that this comic takes place after the events of the Big Picture Show. And if you've seen Ed, and Eddy's Big Picture Show, you know that Johnny ultimately is the new ostracized kid on the block. Because now that everyone loves and appreciates Ed, and Eddy again, they are no longer the pariahs. Johnny is. So I was thinking like, oh, this must be Johnny getting revenge for you know, the rest of the cul-de-sac turning their backs on him or something. But it's not Johnny. It's not Johnny at all, because there's a scene where you see Johnny and Plank, and he's just palling around with the rest of the cul-de-sac like normal. No, this 4th entity is doesn't even have a name. He's literally some crazy homeless guy. They literally just call him the Bum. So basically, the 4th OC is Tyrone Biggums from Chappelle's Show.
No. What time is it?
It's 5 o'clock.
Did I miss a 5 o'clock free crack giveaway?
Tyrone, these are your friends here. They have something they'd like to say to you.
He's just some crazy crackhead who has Shinigami eyes so he can see the mysterious soul that Spell possessed as a chicken, and so killed the chicken because he hates evil entity because he thought it was like a demon or something like that. So the point is, so Tyrone Biggums, that's his name. We're calling him Tyrone Biggums. So the story goes that Tyrone Biggums has Shinigami eyes, and I guess he didn't get his fix of crack that day, so he decided to kill a chicken. And but the chicken didn't fully die, and so now he's trying to perma-kill the chicken, and so he has a fight with edgy Ed in the crow chicken edge mode, and he's vanquished, I think, and yeah, I think, what is it? The spell is exorcised from Ed. They have like a final goodbye, and so the memory of spell shall live forever in Ed's udder. So as you can see, this work is not exactly Shakespearean. It's relatively convoluted. There are loose ends, there are things that are confusing, but most important of all, I should say, is that this work truly feels sincere. As I mentioned in Night of the Were-Ed, this is a work that was made by an angsty teenager who is really into those angsty romances, had this really cool idea for her super pretty OC who would fall in love with her favorite Ed, Edd n Eddy character, who in this case is Ed and not Double D, and you know, wanted to make this dramatic, magical thing and do a scene where she gets to dress up Ed looking like probably another one of her favorite anime characters, so she could fuse two of her husbandos into one husbando and have fun with it. And you know what? Again, I appreciate that because you can clearly tell it was made by someone young. And I truly believe that fan fiction, fan art, fan gushing, and creating work is important in the growth of a creator because it forces you to make something. There is a phrase, I forgot who said it, but it basically goes, perfect is the enemy of good. And the idea is that if you are a perfectionist and you're so worried that your comic or your painting or your script or your book or whatever is not perfect, it will never be made. Sometimes you just got to put it out there. And to me, edgy teen angst fan fiction is the ultimate manifestation of that concept. Yeah, it's probably going to suck. People might make fun of you, but it's going to help you develop a thick skin. It's going to help you realize what works and what doesn't. And then from there, you can grow until you make something much better. So, Darkened Sparrow, if you happen to be watching this video, I'm glad you made this. I'm aware that this was made literally a decade ago, back when you were but a young teenager. You know, this is not to drag you for something that you made when you were young, but this is an important point I want to make, is that I think this should be done more, and you really don't see this kind of fan fiction around anymore because of how volatile the internet has become. Anyway, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up there for today. I thank you for spending this time with me and watching this video and joining me on this little trip down a memory lane of some kind. If you want to stalk me elsewhere on the interwebs, I'll go ahead and leave up my links here up on the screen. Go ahead and, you know, comment down below. Let me know what you think about this particular work or any kind of similar work that you found, especially if it's like that weird off-model Ed, Edd n Eddy, or even like out-of-character Ed, Edd n Eddy, or even if it's entirely on-model and entirely in character, but still weird. Like, definitely let me know about that. So yes, with all that said, I greatly thank you for spending this time with me. I do hope you all stick around. And until next time, hold the love in your udder and deuces.